Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the class today. That is English class. And today we're looking at word and sentence stress. Word and sentence stress. Now, when we talk about the word and the sentence, everybody will believe with me that for you to have a sentence, you need to build upwards. Now, you build upwards to form phrases. When you add a finite verb to a phrase, it turns to a clause. And then when you join maybe a main clause and a subordinate clause together, you have a sentence. So basically, we'll say that the first thing that you have to consider when you're building up a sentence is the word. Now, we're not looking at the word in meaning, but we want to talk about an aspect on the analysis of words and what we can look around it when it comes to using words in the English language. Now, that aspect we want to talk about is stress. Now, I am not talking about being tired or fatigue, as it may come, but we're talking about something that is so spectacular about the English language. Now, basically, one thing that has differentiated the English language from African languages, because I am an African and I have studied much of the African languages to a certain level, so I can equate both languages. Now, one thing that is so special about the English language is that the African languages are tonal, but the English language is stress time. That is what we consider when looking at an African language phonologically, that is why pronouncing words in African languages. It's not the same thing that we consider when we are pronouncing words in the English language. Now, what do I mean by tonal? Yeah, I am a Yoruba person, and to an extent, I have studied much of the Yoruba words. And then I realized that sometimes it is possible that words that are pronounced differently, sometimes we have the same spelling. For instance, there is a particular word in the Yoruba language that is spelled O-W-O. This three-letter word has a whole range of several pronunciations. Now, I'm just going to bring out two. O-W-O in Yoruba can be pronounced as Owo, which means money. And the same three-letter word can be pronounced as Owo, which means business. Now, though I have the same spelling, but they are differentiated by meaning and pronunciation. Now, you can have a similar effect in the English language when you're talking about homonyms. However, if you look at the words that are pronounced, the tone of pronouncing the first one differs from the tone of pronouncing the second one. One is O-wo, O-wo. One is O-wo, O-wo. Now, in the Yoruba language, one is re-mi, the tone re and mi. The second one is do-do, the tone do-do. Now, the first one has a mid and high tone, and the second has two low tones. Now, that is just about the Yoruba language as part of the African languages. Now, and then studying some other African languages, I realized that most of them are tonal. So by the time you are pronouncing some African languages, you identify some words by the tones that they come with. But for the English language, they don't work with tones. They basically work with stress. Now, what we call stress in the English language means prominence. Now, if we say that a word is stressed in a sentence, that is, there is emphasis, there is prominence placed on that word in the sentence. Now, having known that, now we want to look at the individuality of a word and how it is stressed. In the English language, when we are talking about the word, a word can consist of several syllables. You could have a one-syllable word, you could have a two-syllable word, you could have a three-syllable word, and you could have a multiple syllable words. Now, what do we mean by syllable? A syllable is a division of a word that can be pronounced at one breath taking. That is, if I breathe in and I breathe out, that part of that word that can be pronounced at that breath taking is a syllable. Now, I said earlier that I said we have a syllable word, 2 syllable, 3 and more. Now, a syllable word is called a monosyllabic word. That is, there are some words that you can only pronounce them once. For instance, run. Run is pronounced once, run. You can breathe in and breathe out and pronounce once. You can breathe in and breathe out and pronounce dog. You can breathe in and breathe out and pronounce man. But if you have words like living, now you need to breathe in and out twice to pronounce such words. So if you look at the word very well, the way I pronounce it, living, live in, live in. Now, this is it. I have divided into 2 parts. Now, those 2 parts are syllables, 2 syllables. Live in, 2 syllables. So a word with 2 syllables is called a disyllabic word, Now, if you have a word with 3 syllables, that is a word that you can divide into 3 syllables, you call that a trisyllabic word, And then if you have a word that has more than 3 syllables, ranging from 4 to infinity, you call those ones a polysyllabic word. You could have a word with 15 syllables. You could have a word with 50 syllables. It depends on how you can compose the word together to form up this word. So by the time you bring in syllables and then you pronounce it, it is a word. So what you see in a word will be division of syllables. So it may range from 1 syllable to many syllables. And so pushing from there, what we have said is that the English language is often referred to as stress time. That is, when you are considering the prominence of a word in a sentence, you consider the timing of pronunciation with it. Now, stress in a spoken sentence occurs at regular intervals. That is, they are regularly timed. That is, the timing for each word, either stressed or unstressed, are at regular intervals. The movement of time, the transition of pronunciation from one word to another is guided by time. So it's not just that you just open up your mouth and you pronounce words anyhow when you're speaking the English language or when you want to make some expression in the English language. No, you have to consider the stress and you consider the time. And we say that the time to say something depends on the number of stressed syllables, not the number of syllables itself. So what we are trying to say is that it is possible that in an English expression, you have a word that has 500 syllables. Now, the number of syllables you have in that expression will not determine what that sentence says, but the way you pronounce that expression, how you pronounce each word in that expression is determined on the number of stressed syllables. That is, the number of prominent syllables in the sentence. Moving on from there, we said a word stress means a prominent syllable, that is, a syllable that is famous, that is emphasized, that we have added pressure, we have added more impact on, is what we call a stressed syllable. So when you are trying to make a sentence and you realize that, or you're trying to listen to someone and you realize that there is an impact or an emphasis on a particular part of the word, it means that syllable in that word is stressed. Now we have some examples as shown. Now, the first one we want to look at is the teacher. Now, you will note that with the pattern, I have a big dot and a small dot. Now, the small dot represents those that are pronounced low, with low prominence, that are pronounced, the part of the word that is pronounced low. Now, the big one with the big dots is the one that is heightened, that this syllable that is emphasized, the syllable that is stressed. So it is teacher, teacher, teacher. The second one is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. The third one is understand, understand, understand. The fourth one is continue, continue. Now you realize that at the pronunciation of each of these words, it is like it sounds tonal, but we are not really looking at the tone, but we are looking at the pitch of the pronunciation of these words, placing emphasis on parts of the words. So any one of these syllables as used in the words given to them, it means the one you place emphasis on is the stressed syllable. Any part of a word that emphasis is placed on, that is the stressed syllable. If you pick up your lexicon, that is the dictionary, and then you're trying to look up a word, you realize that there will majorly in almost all of the dictionaries that we have. Now there's something we call accent, something that looks like small letter I without a dot on it. We call that the accent. Now, any syllable that the accent is resting on is the stressed syllable. So, taking for instance the words that we have here, the accent will be on T for the word teacher. The accent will be on beau for the word beautiful. The accent will be on stand from the word understand. And the accent will be on T from the word continue. So that is how you identify words that are stressed and which part of the word is stressed. Now, I want you to put it in your mind that anytime you're talking about the word, or you're talking about word stress, what you consider is the stressed syllable. The stressed syllable. Moving on from there, said how to pronounce word stress. Now, when you have a word and you want to look at, or you want to identify the stress syllable, these are the three criteria that you put in check. The first one will be that the particular syllable that is stressed will be longer in duration. So which means it is possible that if it has a vowel sound in it, the vowel sound will be stressed, that is, it will be a long vowel sound. Basically, with the consonant sounds, we don't have long consonant sounds. So it is only with the vowel that we have the short vowel sounds and long vowel sounds. So what we're trying to say is that one of the criteria that we have that we can use to identify stress is a stress syllable in an English word is that the stress syllable is longer in duration. That is, we take a long time to pronounce that syllable. The second thing is that it is higher in pitch. It is higher in pitch. That is, when you are pronouncing it, the pitch of your voice is raised. The pitch of your voice is raised. And then the third one is that it is louder in volume. It's louder in volume. Something synonymous to the height in pitch. So you must consider that there is length in duration, there is height in pitch, and there is loudness of the volume of that syllable. So moving up from there quickly. Now, the first word that we have, how do we now situate these three criteria as earlier explained while pronouncing the word teacher? Now, look at it. If it is longer, we pronounce it as teacher, teacher, teacher. Now, if we are pronouncing it high, what we have there is that we have teacher, teacher. The first one to show the length, we have teacher, teacher. The second one to show height in pitch, teacher, teacher. You realize that the T is heightened and the chair is low. Another one to show the loudness is teacher, teacher, teacher. Now, if you combine all of these together, what you have is what? Teacher, teacher. So you can apply this to any other word that you want to pronounce. So by the time you pronounce words guided by the lexicon, not the dictionary, guided by the dictionary, you'll be able to identify how words are pronounced, because you need to understand where the stress is placed in a word before you can pronounce the word rightly. I can tell it to you that there are so many words here in Africa that we pronounce wrongly. And that is because on this part of the world, we are concerned with the tones that our words give. But unlike the African languages, the English language considers stress and not tone. So those are things that you need to consider when you are pronouncing a word in English language. Moving up from there, now how do we obey rules? You know, there are rules that we need to obey. Basically, in the English language, there is no aspect of the English language that is not ruled. So almost everything that you have to do in the English language, you must follow the rules so that you can do it rightly. Now, when it comes to stress, what are the rules that you have to follow such that these rules will guide you and you can continue to pronounce words rightly? Now, the first column that we want to look at is the word type. The second thing is, where is the stress? That is, if we look at word types, now we are talking about the word forms or part of speech. Now, which part of it can be stressed? That is, which syllable can be stressed? If you have maybe a disyllabic word, a trisyllabic word, or a polysyllabic word. So which syllable in each of these words can be stressed? Now, the first one is that if you have a two-syllable word, or which we call disyllabic, which we call disyllabic. So it is either two syllables or disyllabic words. Now, if we have a disyllabic noun or a two syllables noun, the stress is placed on the first syllable. So what you need to consider now is, as much as you understand and you can identify words by their part of speech, you need to understand which part of it will be pronounced emphatically. So now, this is it. So it means for most two-syllabic nouns, two-syllabic nouns, I am not saying all of them, but usually most of them, the stress is placed on the first syllable. The stress is placed on the first syllable. However, on verbs with two syllables, the stress is placed on the last syllable. So you can make it a sum. For two-syllabic nouns, the stress is placed on the first, and for two-syllabic verbs, the stress is placed on the last. So whenever I'm teaching my students, I tell them nouns for F, verbs for L. Nouns for Fs, verbs for Ls. That is, for two-syllabic nouns, I go with the first syllables. For two-syllabic verbs, I go with the last syllables. That has been what I guide myself with. So anytime I want to identify stress in a two-syllabic word, the first thing I have to consider is that word a noun or a verb? If I realize that it is a noun and that it has two syllables, automatically it should suggest that the stress is placed on the first syllable. But if I realize that it is a verb, automatically or usually the stress will be on the last syllable. And from the words that I have exemplified, for nouns we have center, center, object, object. We have flower, flower. And for the verbs we have release, release, admit, admit, arrange, arrange. You realize that while I'm pronouncing them, the pitch, the length, everything comes together to give us the right pronunciation of those words. And then we'll move up from there and then we go into compound words. By the time we go into compound words, we realize we can have a compound noun, we can have a compound adjective, we can have compound verbs. So as much as we can have singular words in the English language, we can have compound words. So now, if you have a compound noun, that is maybe a noun plus a noun, or an adjective plus a noun, and then these two parts of speech join together to form a noun. Now, it means the stress is placed on the first part. On the first part. That is, whatever thing you are stressing there. If you have a compound word with maybe two words not joined, it means your stress is placed on the first word and not the second word. Now, after considering the first word, you may need to apply the rule of the disyllabic word to say that the stress is placed on the first syllable of a disyllabic noun. Now, so if you look at the first word, we have desktop, desktop. Now we have two words there, We have desk and we have top. We have desk and we have top. Two words that have their own meaning joined together to form a singular word. And that is how you identify a compound word. So a desktop now has its stress on the first syllable, desk. So it is desktop, 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 desktop. So for a word as pencil case, pencil case, pencil case, you realize that the stress is placed on the first word and also on the first syllable of the first word. The first word and on the first syllable of the first word. So remember, for compound nouns, this stressed syllable is on the first word and usually on the first syllable of the first word. And you can see in other examples that we have. And if we have compound adjectives, now a compound adjective may be an adjective from plus a noun in its past participle. So we can see, for example, well-meant, hard-headed, old-fashioned. You realize that these words are two words, an adjective and a verb in the past participle. Now, so what we're trying to say is that once you realize that it's an adjective, a compound adjective, the stress is placed on the second syllable. The stress is placed on the second syllable. So you consider that. Also for a compound verb, the stress is placed on the second syllable. The stress is placed on the second syllable. So pay attention to that. So moving on quickly because of our time. Now we'll move further to look at some other types of words or other formations of words. Now, if you have a phrasal verb is you adding a preposition to a noun, joining a preposition to a noun to be used in a sentence as a verb. Pardon me, sorry. Joining a preposition to a verb. I'm sorry for that. Joining a preposition to a verb. And when you're using such in a sentence, you use it as a verb, as one singular entity, as a singular verb. Not that you consider the preposition in your sentence. Now, you could, I want you to know that basically we can use a preposition to show positions, and then we can use it to show interaction between two items, two similar items in a sentence. Now, when you're using a preposition as an adverb or to show position, that is part of what you can use a preposition for, that is when you're representing it as an adverb. Now, you may need to consider how it is placed. But now, when we're talking about phrasal verbs, you add a preposition to a verb, and the addition of these two entities comes together as one. It comes together as one. So a phrasal verb will have a verb and a preposition. Now, so when you are using that formation, you use that formation as one verb. So if you are to stress a phrasal verb, the stress is placed on the preposition. The stress is placed on the preposition. That is why you have it as you have it in turn off, buckle up, and out. Now you realize that the stress is placed, the stress is placed on the prepositions that we have in the formation. Now, if you have words ending with some suffixes, now, for instance, if you have words ending with IC, as you can see, the syllable comes on the word before the last. That is, if you have it in 3-syllabic words or 4-syllabic words, 3-syllabic words or 4-syllabic words. Now, you count your syllable down 1, 2, 3. Now, if you have 3-syllabic words, it means you will be on the penultimate syllable. That is what you call the second to the last. That is what we call penultimate. So, and in the word economic, now you realize that it is the third syllable there. The third syllable there is stressed. In the word geometric. Now you realize that the second syllable is stressed. And in the word electrical, you see that the second syllable is stressed. So if we look at it very well, it is most likely to be that the second syllable, if you have a 3-syllabic words, the second syllable that in that word, for words that end with IC or maybe AL. Now, if you look at it, if you have electric, that is why the syllable is, the stress syllable is on the second one. We have geometric, the second one, economic, the second one. So pay attention to that. So once you are able to identify those, you get the words pronounced easily. Another one is words ending with TION, CIAN, and SION. As you see them exemplified, you see where the stress is placed. So pay attention to this and go over this. There are so many words in the English language, though we may have exemptions. Are you getting it? But that does not mean that these rules will not guide the usual words that we may have. So maybe out of 1,000, you may have maybe 300 or 200 exempted from some of these rules. So what we'll say is that for this rule, we use them with the usual words that we have in the English language. So usually these rules will guide the words that we use. And then if you have words ending with PHY, GY, TRY, CY, FY, and AL, you see that it has been said that the third syllable from the last, that is, when you are counting from the end, you count backwards. The third one, count from the end, you count backwards. The third one will give you the stressed syllable. So you can see in words as photography, biology, so geometry. So you can have those ones. And what's that end? That ends with meter. You can see as they are exemplified. So pay attention to those ones, and then you work with these rules. So by the time you have some words with you, use your dictionary, be guided by your dictionary, so that you can pronounce this word rightly. I believe that by the time you are exposed to more words, and then you can guide yourself with the dictionary, you will learn how to pronounce words very well and accurately, so that by the time you start pronouncing word correctly, you will actually be using the Queen's tongue in your pronunciation. So that is where we'll stop for today on word stress. In our next class, we'll continue from there and we'll move on to sentence stress. So because of our time, quickly, I'll rush back so that I can give us a revision of all we have discussed. We said that the English language is differentiated from African languages because African languages are tonal, but the English language is stress time. And we said that when you're talking about stress, sorry, we are talking about stress in words. We are talking about a syllable, a part or a division of that word that is pronounced prominently. And then I gave us words as teacher, beautiful, understand, continue. So now, and then I told you that by the time you want to consider how to stress words, these 3 criteria are what you put in check. So by the time you are able to put these 3 criteria in check, you realize that gradually you begin to pronounce words correctly. So all you need to do is that you have to practice this. Remember, we were told that practice makes what? Perfection. Practices make perfection. So when you practice these things continuously, you realize that you get perfected in words. And by the time you are perfected in words, once you are able to bring these words together, you see that your sentences, the way you express your sentences, it will be upgraded. Then before you know it, you start talking like the Britons, you start talking like the Americans, and then you can equate your spoken English with them. So this is a way to get out of the so-called Nigerian English style or the African English styles. So put these criteria into practices, and before you know it, you're pronouncing words as the native speakers. And then I said, this is an example how to pronounce the word teacher. And then I gave us some rules, and these rules are to be followed. A disyllabic noun will always be stressed on the first syllable, and a disyllabic verb will usually be stressed on the second syllable. And other ones that we discussed, please put them to practice and always use them. So the assignment I will give to us is that all you need to do is that write about 20 words on your own. Just randomly pick 20 words and try to put stress on them. All you need to do is, for instance, if I want to stress the word center, I will just underline the word said, and then I leave said out of it. So you can also do that. So try your hands on some words. So after trying your hands on some words, pick your dictionary and look up these words. So to check if you are able to get them right. And as you practice this continuously, you realize that you will continue to get better. So thank you for your time. Have a wonderful time to yourself. Bye.